Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We're diving into a book that has, well, it hasn't just sold millions. It seems like it's fundamentally shifted how countless people think about money.
Mm.
For 25 years now, it's remained this go-to source for rethinking your financial life.
Yeah, it really has.
We are, of course, talking about Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is its incredible staying power, the sheer reach.
Yeah, think about it. Celebrating a quarter century, still ranking #1 in its category on major platforms.
Over 40 million copies sold.
Right. Translated into, what, 38 languages?
Yeah, that's not just a popular book. That's like a cultural phenomenon in the world of personal finance.
Definitely. It tells us there's something foundational, maybe even a bit disruptive at its core that just keeps resonating with people.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, our source material is, well, it's uniquely direct. The Amazon product page for the 25th anniversary edition.
Ah, interesting. So not the book itself directly, but the page about the book.
Exactly. And it's kind of a treasure trove because it gives us the book's own description of its message, details straight from the author's background, and maybe most powerfully, insights into how readers have reacted.
Okay.
What stuck with them, through customer reviews and those popular Kindle highlights.
Right, right. So it's like getting the official summary combined with the collective wisdom of thousands of readers.
Pretty much. So our mission today is to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge from the source to really understand the core message of this, well, incredibly influential book.
And get a sense of the person who wrote it.
Yeah, and explore why, after all this time, it continues to be such a compelling read for anyone looking to take charge of their financial future.
We're doing this deep dive specifically for you to offer a shortcut maybe to grasping the essence of this classic and maybe sparking some new thinking.
Right, because it promises to challenge some, deeply ingrained conventional ideas about money that many of us just sort of accept as truth.
And isn't challenging our assumptions one of the best ways to learn? Let's jump in and see what Rich Dad, Poor Dad is really teaching us according to its own description and its readers.
Well, exploring texts like this, especially ones framed around, intentionally contradicting conventional wisdom, it isn't just about absorbing information.
Okay.
It's about using that information as a lens to examine our own beliefs. And the commonly accepted narratives around money, that's where the real value lies, I think.
Makes sense. So let's start at the beginning. What is the fundamental premise Rich Dad, Poor Dad is built upon?
So the book is presented as Robert T. Kiyosaki's personal story, his narrative.
Okay.
He shares his experience of growing up influenced by two very different male figures. His biological father, who he calls Poor Dad,
Right.
and the father of his best friend, referred to as Rich Dad.
The two dads.
Exactly. The core idea, straight from the source, is to explore the contrasting lessons about money and investing that these two pivotal figures imparted to him.
Okay, so it's framed as a tale of two mentors, two opposing philosophies about money and wealth, seen through the eyes of a young person learning the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
The Amazon source specifically says the book aims to explode myths and challenge common beliefs. Which widely held ideas does it really take aim at?
Well, one of the first, and you could argue maybe the most impactful, is the myth that you need to earn a high income to be rich.
Okay, that's big right away.
Yeah, it immediately challenges a very common assumption that your salary level is the primary determinant of your wealth potential.
That is huge. Because most people I know, myself included sometimes, we default to thinking the path to wealth is simply getting a better paying job or, working harder to earn more money.
Precisely. The book tries to disconnect earning money from building wealth. Another significant conventional belief it challenges, according to the source description, is the idea that your house is automatically an asset.
Now, that's counterintuitive for a lot of listeners, myself included.
Huh.
We're constantly told that buying a home is one of the best investments you can make. How does the book frame this differently?
Well, it brings us to perhaps the book's most famous contribution to financial literacy. Its simple yet powerful definitions of asset and liability.
Ah, yes. I've heard this bit.
Right. The source states the book defines these concepts once and for all. An asset, in the book's terms, is something that puts money in your pocket.
Puts money in. Okay.
Conversely, a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
Takes money out.
Simple. Very simple, but profound in its application.
Ah, the cash flow definition.
Mhm.
Okay, linking this back to the house. If your house primarily results in Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance costs, all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and isn't generating income. By that definition, it's functioning as a liability, not an asset.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from what you own to what generates income.
Right.
And the source provides a perfect concrete example of this mindset in action, which is actually one of the most frequently highlighted passages by readers.
Oh, really? What is it?
When I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house.
Oh, that quote perfectly illustrates the core principle. It's not saying don't buy a big house.
No, not at all.
It's saying change the order and the method. Acquire income-generating assets first and let them pay for the desired liability. That's a fundamental mind shift right there.
It really is. It's about building a system where your money is working for you to acquire things, rather than you working harder just to pay for things that are taking money out of your pocket.
Having money work for you.
This distinction, having money work for you versus working for money, is, in fact, the single most highlighted phrase in the entire book by readers, according to the source.
Wow. Okay, that statistic alone tells you which idea is truly sticking with people. It's the core message distilled right down.
Absolutely.
So, beyond challenging those myths and redefining asset liability, what else does the book aim to achieve?
According to the source, it aims to show parents why they cannot rely solely on the traditional school system to teach their children about money.
Ah, the education piece.
Right. The book positions itself as teaching you what you should be teaching your kids about money for their future financial success.
Which aligns perfectly with the subtitle, What the Rich Teach Their Kids. It suggests traditional education is falling short in preparing young people for the financial realities of the world.
Hmm.
And this knowledge gap needs to be filled elsewhere, presumably by parents or through, self-education, like reading this book.
Yes, that seems to be the strong implication. And what's truly remarkable, the source emphasizes, is that despite the world changing rapidly over the last 25 years,
Yeah, especially with technology and how money works now.
right. Despite all that, the core principles in Rich Dad, Poor Dad haven't changed. In fact, the messages are described as being more timely and more important than ever.
More important than ever. Why do they say that? Especially given the rapid technological shifts in finance.
Well, the source suggests that while technology has brought speed and innovation, the fundamental need for financial education and understanding how money really works remains critical.
Okay.
In a world that might feel financially more complex or uncertain, the book's timeless wisdom and no-nonsense lessons are framed as essential tools for anyone wanting to regain a sense of control and build a secure financial future.
So it sounds like the very changes in the world might actually make the book's cash flow-focused principles and emphasis on financial literacy more relevant, not less, as a kind of grounding framework.
That's definitely the argument presented, and the 25th anniversary edition itself reinforces this idea. It includes a new section specifically discussing the importance of milestones,
Milestones. How so?
using them to measure time, mark progress, reflect on lessons, celebrate accomplishments, and kind of integrate past, present, and future.
Interesting. Like checkpoints on the financial journey.
Exactly. The source notes that the original content was deliberately preserved in this edition, seeing it as testimony to the book's enduring relevance and having stood the test of time.
So the book's core message is considered so solid it doesn't need updating. But the anniversary edition adds layers of reflection on the journey, the continuous process of financial growth, using milestones as checkpoints.
Correct. It acknowledges the passage of time and the journey of financial education, while affirming the core lessons are still the bedrock. Updated sidebars from the 20-year edition were included, but the central narrative and lessons remain untouched.
Which makes sense if you want to facilitate sharing these original messages across generations, like the reviews suggest people are doing.
Precisely.
And speaking of sharing and reach, let's really underscore those impressive statistics again. They just paint this picture of a book that has permeated global consciousness.
They truly do. Over 40 million copies sold worldwide, translated into 38 languages. That's a global footprint few books achieve.
It's incredible.
It consistently holds the #1 rank in personal finance, parenting, and investing categories globally on major platforms.
Still, after 25 years.
Still, the source highlights its status as a long-running bestseller on multiple major lists: The New York Times, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, USA Today.
Wow.
And perhaps most astonishingly, it's listed as the third longest-running how-to bestseller of all time.
Third longest running how-to bestseller ever. Yeah. That is phenomenal. It puts it in the same league as like perennial guys on cooking or fitness or something that had been around for ages.
Exactly. It signifies that people aren't just buying it, they're continuing to discover it, recommend it, and find its core message relevant year after year.
It speaks volumes about a persistent, widespread desire for the specific type of financial knowledge and maybe alternative perspective the book offers.
Yeah, it's clearly filling a perceived gap in conventional wisdom and education.
So let's bring this back to you, the listener. Why is understanding these ideas like the difference between assets and liabilities, or challenging conventional wisdom about income or home ownership, why is this so crucial for you right now?
Well, because, as the book seems to argue, if you've only ever been taught the conventional path, get a good job, save money, get out of debt, invest for the long term, diversify.
Just standard advice.
The standard advice, which the author controversially labels as bad or obsolete in the source,
Right.
then understanding the idea of building a base of assets that generate income, of having your money work for you, could fundamentally change the trajectory of your financial life.
It's like giving you a different operating system.
That's a good way to put it. A potentially more powerful operating system for navigating the financial world than the one you might have received conventionally.
It sounds less like just managing money and more like building a system for financial independence.
That appears to be the aspiration, empowering you with a different way of seeing and interacting with the financial world, leading to that mind shift readers often describe.
Okay, we've spent a good amount of time on the book's core ideas and why they've had such an impact. But who is the person behind these ideas? What led Robert T. Kiyosaki to develop this perspective and share it so widely? Let's dive into his journey, based on what our source tells us.
Right. The Amazon page introduces Robert T. Kiyosaki not just as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but also emphasizing his roles as an investor, entrepreneur, and educator.
So he's presenting himself as someone with practical, hands-on experience in the world he's writing about, not just a theorist.
Yes, his stated philosophy, according to the source, is built on the belief that everyone has the power to make changes, take control of their financial future, and live the rich life they desire.
The rich life. Okay.
And he's particularly known for his perspectives on money and investing that, as the source puts it, often contradict conventional wisdom.
That aligns perfectly with the book's core premise of challenging those common beliefs we just discussed. He's not just offering a different view, he's actively positioning it against the mainstream advice.
And this willingness to contradict the norm is why the source describes him as having a reputation for straight talk, irreverence, and courage.
Irreverence and courage.
Yeah.
Interesting descriptors.
Yeah. He is portrayed as a passionate and outspoken advocate for financial education, largely driven by his view that what he calls old advice, that conventional path of get a good job, save, get out of debt, invest long-term, diversify, is actually bad, obsolete, and flawed for today's financial landscape.
Calling that widely accepted wisdom bad is certainly a strong position. It takes a certain level of conviction or perhaps that irreverence to make that claim so forcefully.
It definitely sets him apart and likely contributes to the book's controversial but also, compelling nature for many readers. The source provides some biographical details that give us clues about the experiences that might have shaped these unconventional views.
Okay, let's walk through those key life points. What does it say?
He was born and raised in Hawaii and is described as a fourth-generation Japanese American.
Okay.
After high school, he graduated college in New York. Then a notable point in his early adult life was joining the Marine Corps.
Ah, military service.
Yes, and serving in Vietnam as an officer and helicopter gunship pilot.
Wow. That's a background very different from a traditional finance path. Military experience often instills unique perspectives on risk, discipline, operating in complex environments.
You'd think so.
How might that have influenced his later views on money and business?
Well, the source doesn't explicitly draw the line, but one could speculate that operating in high-pressure situations, making critical decisions under duress, might foster a different kind of risk assessment than is typically taught in, say, business school.
Yeah, possibly. It's a very non-conventional start for someone who would later write about wealth building.
Definitely. Following his military service, he transitioned to the corporate world, working in sales for Xerox Corporation.
So from high-stakes military operations to corporate sales. Still not a typical financial background, but sales definitely involves understanding value, negotiation, and, well, generating income.
Yes. Gaining experience in a large corporation like Xerox would provide a different kind of exposure to the business world. But his path soon shifted dramatically. In 1977, he started his first company.
Okay, entrepreneurship begins.
Right, which brought the first nylon and Velcro surfer wallets to market.
Surfer wallets, okay. Moving from being an employee to a product entrepreneur. That's a significant leap and likely involved learning about building a business from the ground up, the hard way perhaps.
Absolutely. That entrepreneurial path continued. In 1985, he founded an international education company focused specifically on teaching business and investing.
Ah, an education company dedicated to the very topics he would later write about in his book. Yeah. This seems like a direct precursor, maybe allowing him to refine and test the ideas he would later publish.
It certainly does. It indicates a long-standing commitment to teaching these principles long before the book.
Right.
Then, according to the source, in 1994, he sold his business and retired at age 47 through his investments.
Retired at 47 through investments. That's a crucial detail, isn't it? It positions him as someone who claims to have achieved the financial outcome the book advocates before he even wrote it.
Exactly.
He didn't write a theoretical book. He wrote about the path he claims he'd already walked.
That adds significant weight to his message, or at least to the narrative. It grounds his unconventional advice in his own claimed experience of building assets that generated enough income for him to become financially independent at a relatively young age.
And the source then states he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad during his short-lived retirement.
Short-lived, yeah.
So the book emerged not from a need for income, but apparently from a desire to share the lessons he felt were missing from conventional education, lessons that had allowed him to retire early.
That's the narrative presented by the source, yes. His journey from military service and corporate sales to serial entrepreneurship, building an education business, and achieving early retirement through investments provides the backdrop for the unconventional, experience-driven perspectives found in his work.
It paints a picture of someone who didn't just read about finance, but actively lived and experimented with a different approach than the standard get a job, save, retire late model.
That's the strong implication from his biography as presented in the source. He embodies the alternative path he advocates.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't the only way he shared these ideas. Our source makes it clear it's part of a much larger body of work.
Correct. The source notes that Rich Dad, Poor Dad is part of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. It states there are currently 26 books in the series.
26.
Although, interestingly, another mention in the source refers to it as part of a series of 18 books, so a slight discrepancy there.
Okay, maybe counting different editions or something. But regardless of the exact number, the clear point is that this one book was the launchpad for a whole franchise of material built around these core ideas.
Absolutely. It's a substantial collection.
What other specific books are highlighted in the source?
The source specifically mentions why the rich are getting richer and more important than money, noting they were published for the book's 20th anniversary.
All right.
And why the rich are getting richer is even specifically positioned as Rich Dad Graduate School.
Graduate school. Okay. That suggests these later books might delve deeper into more complex applications or advanced concepts, building on the foundation of the first book.
That's the natural interpretation, yeah. If the first book challenges your fundamental understanding and provides a new framework, the graduate school book would likely explore more sophisticated strategies or nuances within that framework.
Makes sense.
The source also mentions, purely as a factual note, that Robert Kiyosaki co-authored 2 books with Donald Trump, specifying this occurred prior to Trump's presidency.
Understood. Just noted as a historical fact from the source regarding his co-authors.
Yeah.
No political angle, just part of his publishing history.
Correct. Just reporting what the source states.
Okay. And beyond the books.
Beyond the books, the source highlights a significant educational tool he created before writing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The educational board game Cash Flow 101.
Ah, the game. I've heard of this. A board game to teach financial concepts. It's a very hands-on, potentially engaging way to learn.
Yes, he explicitly created the game, according to the source, to teach individuals the financial and investment strategies that his rich dad spent years teaching him. It sounds like an attempt to replicate the learning experience he describes in the book through interactive play.
That's clever. And has it caught on?
Apparently so. The source notes that this game has fostered a network of over 2,100 independent cash flow clubs globally.
Wow. Over 2,100 clubs centered around playing this game. That's a testament to how people are drawn to this more experiential way of learning the concepts and how it builds community around financial education.
It really extends his educational philosophy beyond just reading, offering a practical, interactive way for people to learn about things like assets, liabilities, income statements, balance sheets, all in a simulated environment.
Cool. Any other ongoing work mentioned?
The source also mentions his ongoing writing, highlighting a bi-weekly column titled Why the Rich Are Getting Richer for Yahoo Finance, and a monthly column called Rich Returns for Entrepreneur magazine.
So he continues to actively disseminate his perspectives through prominent online and print platforms, reinforcing and expanding upon the ideas from his books. Still very active.
Yes, maintaining a consistent voice and presence in the financial education landscape. This extensive body of work, the numerous books, the interactive game, the ongoing columns, shows a deep and continuous commitment to advocating for financial education on a wide scale, all stemming from that initial book.
And has this body of work garnered specific recognition?
The source notes his induction into the Amazon.com Hall of Fame in 2005 as one of their top 25 authors.
That's significant. Being recognized by Amazon itself, the platform that has been key to his book sales, speaks volumes about his enduring popularity and impact on readers over the years.
Indeed, his work has clearly resonated with a massive audience actively seeking alternative perspectives on money and wealth building.
Okay, we've explored the book's revolutionary ideas, the author's fascinating journey, and his broader impact through other works and the game. But what about the people who have actually read it? What do they think? Let's dive into what readers say based on the reviews summarized in our source.
Yeah, this is always revealing. The overall picture from Amazon is overwhelmingly positive. The book holds a very high average customer rating of 4.7 out of 5 stars.
4.7 is really high.
It is, and based on over 122,000 ratings. That's a huge sample size and a consistently high score.
That kind of rating from so many people indicates something is deeply connecting with readers. What are the main positive themes coming out of those reviews?
The AI-generated review analysis in the source highlights several key positive themes. First and foremost is readability.
Okay, that makes sense given its popularity.
Right. Customers frequently find it engaging, well-written, calling it things like a wonderful textbook, groundbreaking, and a great introduction to financial education.
Easy to get into.
Yeah, the source includes quotes specifically mentioning it's easy to understand, even for people who feel they are not naturally good with finances.
Making potentially intimidating financial concepts easy to understand must be a major factor in its widespread success. It lowers the barrier to entry for learning.
Absolutely. That accessibility seems key. Another major theme is educational value. Readers consistently find it insightful, providing valuable information on building wealth and gaining financial knowledge.
So it delivers on the promise.
Seems so. Reviews describe it as very informative and providing good financial knowledge.
So the core promise of the book, to educate on wealth building, seems to be fulfilled for a significant number of readers.
That appears to be the case. Value for money is also a strong, positive theme. Customers feel it's worth every penny for the financial wisdom it imparts.
Worth the price of the book, basically.
Yes. The source mentions reviews highlighting how it helped them think differently and encouraged critical thinking about money. One reviewer specifically praises its clarifications of misconceptions on wealth.
It sounds like readers perceive a very high return on investment from the knowledge gained, feeling empowered to challenge their own ingrained beliefs.
That seems to be a common thread. Perspective is another key theme. Customers really appreciate the different viewpoint the book offers.
That alternative view again.
Exactly. Noting how it puts complex ideas into a simple format and is applicable to every walk of life. Interestingly, one reviewer even pointed out a whimsical tone.
Whimsical tone in a finance book. That's unexpected. But maybe it contributes to that readability and engagement, making it less dry than typical financial literature.
Could be. It certainly suggests it avoids the dense, jargon-heavy style often found in finance.
What else?
Entrepreneurship is also a significant theme in the reviews. It's widely seen as a valuable resource and a great starter book for early investors and entrepreneurs.
Connecting to his background again.
Right. Customers highlight its practical advice on investing and the entrepreneurial mindset.
This directly connects to the author's own background as an entrepreneur and investor and reinforces that the book isn't just theoretical. It's seen as practical guidance for those looking to build businesses and investments.
And a particularly impactful theme is ages. Customers highly recommend it for any age, but specifically call out teenagers, young adults, and high school students.
Holy cow.
For high schoolers.
Yeah. One quote explicitly mentions the author's ability to span the generational gap.
That's powerful. It suggests these fundamental concepts are not just for adults trying to fix their finances, but are seen as essential, foundational knowledge that should ideally be acquired early in life. It reinforces the book's subtitle about what rich parents teach their kids.
It points to the potential for the book to serve as a foundational text for financial literacy across different generations within a family.
Okay, any other big positive themes? Finally, the theme of asset versus liabilities is consistently highlighted in the reviews. Customers appreciate the book's clear focus on this core concept,
That definition again.
recognizing how understanding this distinction is key to helping them take control of their financial destinies and move towards becoming financially independent.
So that core definition we discussed earlier is truly resonating and seen by readers as the key insight that empowers them to take action. It's the cornerstone idea.
It seems to be the most impactful takeaway that motivates readers to fundamentally rethink their financial approach.
Were there any areas where reader feedback was more mixed? Anything less positive?
Yes, the AI summary notes mixed feedback specifically on storytelling.
Storytelling. How so?
Well, while many appreciate the relatable anecdotes and the narrative structure as making it engaging,
Which contributes to readability.
right, but some readers found it repetitive. The source quotes one reviewer mentioning it starts to repeat itself, feeling like it gives summaries of every chapter as you read.
Okay, so the storytelling approach that makes it accessible for some might feel a bit drawn out or repetitive for others who perhaps want to get to the core points more quickly. It's a trade-off in writing style, maybe?
It seems to be a point of divergence in how different readers experience the book's structure. Fair enough.
Let's look at some specific reader quotes the source provided. These often capture the essence of the book's impact on an individual level, don't they?
They do. There are some truly compelling ones that illustrate that mind shift we've been talking about.
Like what?
One reviewer stated, if governments had the will, they could create more rich dads.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
It's a fascinating leap from personal finance to broader societal implications, suggesting the book's principles could be scaled for public benefit.
That quote is striking. It shows how deeply the ideas can affect someone's thinking, extending beyond personal finances to a vision for society. Very powerful.
Another impactful quote, I thought working was the only option to make money until I read this book and found out there were different ways.
That perfectly encapsulates the core message that wealth doesn't solely come from earned income, but from alternative approaches like building assets, opening up possibilities.
That quote right there explains a huge part of the book's appeal. It opens up possibilities that many people simply aren't aware of through conventional teaching or thinking.
Yeah.
And this one echoes that sentiment. The insights and the information from this book has helped me to perceive the financial world in a different spectrum.
A whole different spectrum. Again, the idea of seeing things through a fundamentally new lens.
It sounds like the book provides not just knowledge, but a completely new framework or spectrum for interpreting financial realities.
A paradigm shift, like you said.
Yes, a paradigm shift for many. And here's a very enthusiastic one that captures both personal impact and the desire to share. Love this book. Only on page 60. So far, I was smiling and laughing. I can't wait to finish this book. Bought 2 more for my daughters.
That quote highlights the engaging tone mentioned earlier, the immediate impact even before finishing, and that powerful desire to pass these lessons on to the next generation, really reinforcing the teaching your kids theme.
Exactly.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, these reviews highlight the potential impact this book could have. Could it offer you a new perspective on your own finances? Could it provide those aha moments that challenge assumptions about income, assets, or what financial education truly is?
The sheer volume and consistency of positive feedback suggests it offers significant, potentially transformative insights for a broad range of readers.
It certainly sounds like a book designed to be thought-provoking and action-oriented. Let's move on to the most popular highlights. These are the specific sentences or phrases that Kindle readers most often mark.
The bits that really jump out.
Yeah, indicating they represent the absolute most impactful nuggets of wisdom for thousands of people.
These highlights are incredibly telling because they are the phrases that literally stopped readers in their tracks, made them pause and mark it.
Okay, what's the top one?
The single most highlighted passage in the entire book, according to the source, is, "The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them."
Bam! That is the core distinction of the book, the fundamental concept it's built on, captured in a single memorable sentence. It represents the entire paradigm shift Kiyosaki advocates.
Absolutely. It's the thesis statement, the rallying cry, distilled into its most concise form.
What's next most highlighted?
The next most highlighted passage is also profoundly insightful, maybe a bit philosophical. There is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal.
Whoa. Okay, unpack that one a bit. That adds such a deep layer. Being broke is temporary finances, but being poor is eternal.
Hmm.
What does that imply? Mindset, lack of knowledge.
That seems to be the implication. It elevates the discussion beyond just the balance in your bank account at any given moment. It focuses on a more fundamental, potentially self-perpetuating condition related to financial understanding and action, or maybe lack thereof.
That's heavy. Okay, what else is heavily highlighted?
Then, of course, the second most highlighted passage overall is the definition we discussed earlier, the cornerstone of the book's practical advice. An asset puts money in my pocket. A liability takes money out of my pocket.
Back to the core mechanic. Again, that simple cash flow-based definition is clearly what readers are latching onto as the key tool for making financial decisions according to the book's framework.
It provides the foundational rule set for the book's financial model. It's the operating principle.
Any other standout?
Another very popular highlight shows the practical application of this rule using a common aspirational goal. When I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house.
Right, the house example again. This isn't just a definition, it's an action plan for a major life purchase. It shows how the book's framework dictates a completely different process for acquiring things.
Prioritizing income generation first.
It provides a tangible example of putting the money works for you principle into practice to achieve a goal, rather than taking on debt that would simply be a liability draining resources. Makes it real.
Exactly. Finally, there's a highlight specifically mentioning Garrett Sutton's books on corporations.
Garrett Sutton, who's that?
The source doesn't elaborate much, just that his books are mentioned. The highlight says they provide wonderful insight into the power of personal corporations.
Okay, so pointing towards a specific strategy.
Yes, a tool within the Rich Dad framework using corporate structures. The fact that a mention of an external resource on this topic is highly highlighted suggests that the idea of personal corporations as a financial tool is particularly intriguing or impactful for readers seeking practical steps beyond the basic concepts.
It suggests that readers are looking for concrete ways to implement the ideas, and the concept of using corporate structures for wealth building, maybe hinted at in the book, resonates strongly as a practical strategy worth exploring further. They want the how-to.
Seems likely. So these most popular highlighted passages truly capture the most impactful and memorable ideas from the book.
Yeah, they really do. They represent the core nuggets readers are extracting, the fundamental difference between working for money versus having money work for you.
That stark view of poverty versus being temporarily broke.
The essential cash flow definitions of assets and liabilities.
A practical example of applying those definitions to a major purchase.
And a hint at specific strategies like using corporations.
They are the concise, powerful takeaways that seem to crystallize the book's message and stick with readers long after they finish the book. They are the absolute purest form of the insights the book offers, at least according to what readers highlight.
Okay, so wrapping this up. This deep dive, drawing solely from the Amazon product page as our source, has covered a significant amount of ground.
It really has.
We've explored the core lessons of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, its fundamental challenge to conventional financial wisdom, its powerful redefinition of assets and liabilities based on cash flow, and its argument for the necessity of financial education outside the traditional school system.
We've looked at Robert Kiyosaki's journey, seeing how his path from military service and corporate life to serial entrepreneur and early retiree likely shaped his unconventional philosophy.
We touched upon his extensive body of work beyond the first book, including follow-up titles and the innovative cash flow game, showing his commitment to spreading these ideas through various mediums.
And we've gained a clear sense of the book's profound impact through the overwhelmingly positive reader reviews, highlighting its readability, educational value, and its ability to deliver that powerful mind shift for countless individuals.
And all of this, as we set out to do, comes directly from analyzing the layers of information available on that single source page, providing you with a concentrated understanding of this highly influential work and the man behind it, without having to sift through tens of thousands of reviews or descriptions yourself.
Right. It's about getting those key insights, those compelling aha moments, efficiently and directly from the source's perspective on itself and its reception.
So, to leave you with a thought to consider, building on those powerful highlights that stick with readers.
Yeah.
If the goal is to have money work for you, rather than just working for money, and the distinction between broke and poor has that eternal dimension, What small, concrete step could you take today, perhaps inspired by the ideas we've explored, to begin shifting your own mindset or actions towards building that asset column?
That's a good question to ponder. It doesn't have to be huge, right?
Exactly. It could be as simple as starting to apply that asset versus liability test to things you own or are considering buying. Or maybe exploring what having money work for you might look like in your own life, whether through investments, a side hustle, or simply changing your perspective on your current income.
Just starting to think differently.
Yeah. This deep dive, grounded in the source material, has hopefully given you a solid foundation. Based on what we've uncovered, the challenging ideas, the author's unconventional path, the resonance with millions of readers,
You might feel compelled to pick up the book itself.
or explore the author's other works, or simply continue looking at your own finances through this potentially new asset-focused lens.
The goal is always to empower you with distilled knowledge from the source, allowing you to decide your next steps on your own financial education journey.